As a way to kind of start this discussion today, I want to take a minute and reflect back to when we started. I'm Stan Jones, president of Complete College America, and we started this enterprise 4.5 years ago. And when we started, there really was not a college completion agenda across this country. In fact, all of us, many of us, were still talking about the hallmark of higher education, which is really about access. And the access agenda that is kind of the DNA of higher education started well over 60 years ago when the GI Bill was first signed. My father went to college on the GI Bill. Many fathers did. But that really dramatically changed higher education in this country. Before the GI Bill, only 8% of the adult population had a four-year college degree. And that dramatically changed with the GI Bill. But it wasn't just the GI Bill. In the 60s and the 70s, we built campuses across the country to accommodate the baby boom generation. So many of us had the mantra that people could live within 30 miles of a college campus. We built significant state financial aid policies, significant federal financial aid policies, the Pell Grant, the student loan program. Many of us were focused on the 10-day count or the 14-day count. We all know what that was. We built at the state level funding formulas that powerfully incented growing enrollment. So if you had more students, you had more money, you had more tuition. And all of those access strategies worked. It worked pretty dramatically. And so in the middle of the recession, which I really thought was quite unique, is in the recession when people weren't buying houses, they weren't buying cars, what they were buying was a college education. And we had a record number of students on college campuses in the midst of the recession. And this was really a testimony, I think, to the strength of higher education, that people really with few dollars would take those few dollars and say, I'm going to steer my economic future through college. That's where I'm placing my bet. And not only did we set a record enrollment, but the freshman class in the middle of recession started to look more like this country than it ever had been before. We had more African American students, we had more Latino students, we had more low-income students, we had more non-traditional first-generation students. So all of those strategies worked. Probably everybody in this room has given a speech encouraging people to go to college, talk to a niece or a nephew. We've redefined the American dream. It's a house, a car, a job, but also sending your kids to college. All of that's been highly successful. And we still need to be committed to that agenda. But we also need to recognize that not all those dreams are fulfilled. And so about 20 years ago, in 1988, I saw a statistic that really stunned me. And it was based on income. It was based on the highest income quartile and the lowest income quartile. And essentially, then it said, if you were born in the highest income quartile in 1988, you had a 77% chance of graduating from college. The lowest income quartile, you had a 7% chance of graduating from college. And I thought, in 1988, after we'd done all this work on access, how could that possibly be that that was still the situation? As you can tell, 20 years later, we've not moved those numbers in any significant way. It's still true that the economic circumstances into which you're born in are a significant determinant as to whether you're going to graduate from college. And it's led also to completion numbers at our four-year colleges, at our two-year colleges, that don't represent where we want to be. And so a lot of us in this room decided that we needed to have a new agenda still committed to access, but looking past the 10-day count, looking past the first-year retention numbers, and looking to the graduation class in the spring to ensure that all of those aspirations could be realized and that the spring graduating class would be as representative as the fall starting class. And so that started a new agenda that many of you joined us in. When we first put out the call to develop the alliance, 17 states joined us immediately. Today, there are 33 states in the District of Columbia, all committed to this new agenda. It's the interesting thing about this agenda, it's kind of an unwritten story. We don't have 60 years of completion strategies like we have 60 years of access strategies. We're starting to write the completion agenda, and you've all been partners in writing it. We started in an unlikely place, and that was to collect data. 30 states provided data to us, including over 750 campuses. And the data told us stories. And the reason we did this is the country didn't have graduation rates for part-time students. 40% of all the students in the country didn't have graduation rate for adult students, graduation rates for transfer students, graduation rates for Pell students. All students that are part of the equity agenda, all students that are part of the non-traditional community. And so pulling all this data together not only helped us get the graduation rates for those groups of students, but also painted pictures of what is going on across this country. And remarkably, it's true across this country and it's true state by state. These graduation rate numbers hold up state by state by state. They're not remarkably different. Community college graduation rates are very similar from state to state to state, as are flagship graduation rates, as are four-year access institution graduation rates. But it also helped us develop and drive policy and pointed the directions we need to go. And so we put out a report called Time is the Enemy that really helped us look differently at time. I think many of us are used to hearing the expression, well, some students need more time than others. You know, and I always remember my grandmother always would refer to me as a late bloomer, even when I was in my 40s. But as it turns out, more time doesn't necessarily help. And we know that the 6-year graduation rate is 55% for a 4-year college. The 8-year graduation rate is 58%. So if you're there, you're 6, you may be living the dream, but you're not achieving the dream. Longer it takes, the less likely you are to graduate. It also gave us information, rich information about remediation going on across this country. And so we put out Remediation Bridge to Nowhere that documented what some people knew, but not many, that we have significant numbers of students starting in remedial courses. 60% at almost every community college in this country. At almost every access institution, 20 or 30% of students start in remedial courses. It also told us overwhelmingly that remediation doesn't work. It's ineffective. The data also, we said, has to drive policy. And it helped us to develop what we call our game changers. And today and tomorrow, we're going to talk about those game changers in a deeper and richer way, in ways that you've helped us to develop. I've said to people that we don't have 101 strategies for college completion. We don't have a 34-point plan. We have 5 game changer strategies. And what makes a game changer is not that it will produce a 5% or a 10% return, a marginal return, but that game changers produce double and triple the kind of results that we need if we're going to move big numbers across this country. And so we started, like many of you did, with performance funding as the first game changer. And as we look back 4.5 years ago, when you started with us, there were only 2 states in the country, Ohio and Indiana, that had statewide performance funding formulas. Today there are 12, and in the next couple of years there are going to be 25. It's sweeping across this country. It's changing the powerful incentives that provided the access agenda. It's starting to balance that and provide incentives to complete the first gateway course, incentives to accumulate credits in the first year, incentives to graduate, incentives to graduate more low-income people. All of these are represented in most of the funding formulas across the country. It also led to the second game changer strategy around remediation, because not only did our data around remediation tell us that a lot of students started, but that many students, it was their first college experience and their last, but it also led us to the fact that the biggest reason that students fail is not that they don't pass a dev ed class. In fact, 60 or 70% of them pass a dev ed class, but they fail because of attrition. They don't take the first class or they don't take the second class. And so many of you have embarked on a strategy, our second game changer, of CoRec Remediation, thinking about remediation not as a prerequisite, but as a co-requisite, putting many, many more students into college level work, college courses that they came to take. Many of them didn't like math in high school, and when they were put in remedial math courses, they didn't come. So putting many more in college level work, but with support, more time on task. And there are best practices across this country, again, that are getting not 5 and 10% returns, but double and triple the kinds of returns with co-requisite remediation. The data also painted these powerful themes around time, choice, and structure. And the time data told us not only does it take too long, but it tells us that full-time students take 12 hours. They don't take 15 or 16, they take 12. And so they already are on the 5-year plan. And so intensity is important. There's probably the highest correlation between graduation and anything else is the number of credit hours you complete in the first year. And so the third basic strategy is to challenge the notion that 12 credit hours is full-time, and to reestablish the concept that it takes 15 credit hours every semester to finish, not only to finish on time, but to finish at all. And so that's game changer number 3. And again, remarkable results. More graduation on time, more graduation, higher GPA, more course completions, starting with 15 credit hours. One of the ones I like the best is around choice, just because it's so counterintuitive to what we think about America. And we've worked a long time to provide more courses, more majors, more times of the day. I was just visiting with somebody today who told me in Tennessee, they offer 8,000 classes across the state of Tennessee, but half of all the students are in 30 classes. Half of all the students are in 30 classes, offering 8,000 classes. We've confused so many students who are looking for clear pathways that students now, 2-year students, instead of getting 60 credit hours to graduate, they get 80. 4-year students, instead of getting 120, they get 135. Full-time students at a community college don't graduate in 2 years, they graduate on average in 4 years. 1-year certificate students graduate in 3 years. And so strategies around clear pathways, putting students on the right pathways, not having them discover the right pathways, default schedules is game changer number 4, GPS. And finally, the last one, which is probably the hardest one, is highly structured programs, cohort programs, thinking about not signing up for classes, but signing up for a whole program as if you would sign up for a nursing program or an engineering program, block schedules, a morning block or an afternoon block. We have 3 states that are starting this next year kind of all in on these highly structured programs, multiple campuses, multiple programs, multiple students. That's game changer number 5. But for all of this to be successful, you can't pick and choose. You can't say, we're going to do one game changer. You need to do all 5. You can't think about them as pilot programs. You need to think about them as this is our new future. This is where we're going. We're leaving the past behind. Because we know what the remediation rates are. We know what the graduation rates are. We have to embrace this new strategy. And we have to do it at scale. And a lot of time that we're going to be spending over the course of the next year with you, that you're spending with us, is about scaling across campuses, across systems, and across states. And so 4 states have committed to scale CoRec at scale across their states by 2014. Another 5 by 2015. As I said, 25 states are headed for performance funding. There's another 5 or 6 states that are implementing 15 to finish. There are 3 states that are doing highly structured programs, and there are 5 states that are implementing GPS across their state. So it's about scale, and it's about doing all 5. Only in this way will we be able to move numbers significant enough that the spring graduating class will look like the fall class we started with. We'll represent this country in the same way that our country needs to be represented if we're going to be successful, and fulfill the dreams of many, many more students. So today and tomorrow, we're going to be talking about these game changers, and we've got experts from across the country, experts from your states that are sharing these best practices. And so when we go home, I think we're all committed to these new strategies. So thanks, and we're going to have a great couple of days. Thank you very much.